with her 3 to 4 times.
He wrote a letter for me to give to the judge for my prostitution case, and saying that he feels that I shouldn't be put in jail, and he's giving me some money.
10 News has learned that Patrolman Everett has since been fired from the police department. The next officer to become involved was Lieutenant Carl Black, who was in charge of that special anti-prostitution unit. Lieutenant Black, Donna claims, never had sex with her.
Well, I first met him when he was running the detail, and he approached me, and he said that he thought I was a very nice person, and that I was different from the typical hooker. Well, it's against policy for, you know, an officer to co-sign for someone that's been charged with a crime that he's supposed to be enforcing.
And he did that?
Yes.
He co-signed your bail?
Yes.
And he gave you money?
Yes.
How much?
$1,000.
Lieutenant Black, she says, has since been placed on a 10-day suspension. The third officer involved is Sergeant Ken Hargrove. Donna claims Lieutenant Black, Sergeant Hargrove, and another police sergeant, Jeff Fellows, all took dates to the Colorado River Resort of Lake Havasu, Arizona, in June of last year. She says Lieutenant Black, quote, set me up with Sergeant Hargrove. She took these pictures of Sergeant Hargrove water skiing. She also claims to have had sex with him. Did you have sex with Sergeant Hargrove?
Yes.
Did he know you were a prostitute?
No, he didn't at the time.
But the lieutenant did?
Yes.
Sergeant Hargrove has since been transferred. Donna also says that a fourth officer, a reservist, known to her only as Mike, paid to have sex with her 3 times.
At Las Colinas, this officer was asking me how much I charge and said he was interested. And I dated him 3 times.
And he paid for sex 3 times?
Yes.
Police Chief Bill Cullender says he cannot, by state law, comment on any matter pending under administrative review.
May take action against the people involved. I cannot comment what that will be until after the situation is investigated and settled.
However, Chief Cullender does say that this 6-month internal investigation reveals that no criminal charges should be brought against any of the 3 police officers. This despite the seriousness of the charges raised by the self-confessed prostitute. We also asked the district attorney's office about this matter. They say they weren't even aware of the investigation.
And from yesterday, when Chief Bill Cullender said no charges would be filed against any of the 3 men. Bob Donnelly, who broke the story last night, has more in this follow-up report.
22-year-old Donna Gentile this morning began serving a 90-day sentence for prostitution. Yesterday, in this exclusive interview, she told of alleged wrongdoings by San Diego police officers.
Well, I performed sex with him, and he's giving me some money.
Today, from jail, she gave me this 7-page letter detailing more allegations of police wrongdoing, claiming she has been harassed by the police for speaking out against them. Among other things, she claims a former customer of hers was the police reserve officer who since testified against her in court, sending her to jail. She says, quote, I dated him 3 years ago. I used to be a prostitute 3 years ago. I never forget a face. This is what she told me yesterday of that same encounter.
I was being transported to jail. This was about 3.5 years ago. And while I was sitting in the car at Las Colinas, this officer was asking me how much I charge and said he was interested. And I dated him 3 times.
And he paid for sex 3 times?
Yes.
Donna also claims that this police officer, Lieutenant Carl Black, befriended her and gave her $1,000. She says she had sex with a police sergeant who did not know at the time she was a prostitute, and that she had sex repeatedly with this man, Patrolman Larry Averick. Averick, she says, demanded sex and, quote, used his badge to get it.
Police officer is to protect and serve, and as far as an officer using his badge to get favors from prostitutes, that's wrong.
And the only one who did that was?
Officer Average.
This deadbolt was placed on Donna's front door by the police internal affairs officers who were concerned about threats from Averick. Averick has since been fired from the force. Lieutenant Black has been officially removed from duty. Donna, in her letter, says she feels betrayed by the police. She helped bust 3 policemen, she says, yet the department refused to help her. Instead, she says, they are turning against her. The police harass me, she says, and they, quote, followed me 4 to 5 hours a day, giving her traffic tickets. Quote, I have 7 tickets pending now. I got 5 of them in 2 hours' time.
And I've indicated to her any help they could give was beyond me, and there's been certainly no assistance from them.
Nothing at all?
Absolutely nothing.
Did Internal Affairs even write a letter to the judge saying that she was cooperating?
Absolutely nothing was done on her behalf.
And now 10 News has learned that yet another member of the San Diego Police Department has been fired for allegedly paying to have sex with Donna Gentile. That member of the police department was a reserve officer. The incident happened back in 1981. He was fired a year later. His name at this time is not being released. As for the other officers involved, that matter is still under investigation. Bob Donnelly, 10 News.
He informed me where the prostitution detail was going to be and if it was going to be on Alcon Boulevard.
Did he give you any other information?
He ran license plates for me. He feels that it would only do me worse than good to be in jail and that I was different from most prostitutes and that I had a job.
A face from the past stares out from the darkness on downtown streets. Donna Gentile's face is on 2 billboards, and the letters NHI appear next to her portrait. The letters stand for No Humans Involved, a police slang for the death of a person on the fringe of society. Gentile's death was investigated by the Metropolitan Task Force, which has been looking into a string of prostitute murders since 1988. The people who commissioned the billboard say they want to focus attention on the Gentile murder investigation as well as other unsolved crimes.
A group of local artists wants to make sure Donna Gentile and other women like her aren't forgotten. Gentile was the prostitute and police informant murdered 7 years ago. Her face is now on 2 billboards downtown. Next to her picture are the letters NHI, a police term which stands for No Humans Involved. The artists say police use the term to disregard crimes against people on the fringes of society. The artists say the billboards are to remind people of the unsolved prostitute murders here.
If you visit downtown San Diego this weekend, you may see 2 billboards with the inscription NHI and the picture of a woman. The billboards are the work of a group of local artists who say they want to bring attention to the plight of abused women. Now, specifically, they're pointing to the string of murders being investigated by the Metropolitan Homicide Task Force. The photo is of the 2nd victim in that string, Donna Gentile. The letters mean No Humans Involved, an old police term no longer commonly used, referring to slain prostitutes, transients, and drug abusers.
She has been the subject of an intense police investigation and media scrutiny, and now she has become an artist's statement. Bernard Gonzalez explains.
What would you call this? A political statement? A curiosity? How about art? Is it art?
Well, we consider it art. I mean, that's for the public to judge, but yeah, that's why we do it.
This billboard is directly across from the county administration building. The display was designed by a group of 5 artists. It shows a photo of murder victim Donna Gentile and the letters NHI, an old police phrase used to describe murder victims who were prostitutes, transients, or drug addicts. Is this a direct jab, if you will, at the Metropolitan Homicide Task Force?
No, we wouldn't. We're not indicting anybody at this point. Obviously, Donna Gentile, who's on the billboard here, had some relationship with the police, did testify shortly, a month, 6 weeks before she was dead. But clearly, we're not attempting to indict anyone.
Donna Gentile was 22 years old when she was found dead with her mouth filled with gravel. She's the 2nd in a string of 45 murders that have been investigated by the task force. It's been reported she was a police informant.
What does it say? what does it mean? I really don't get the point at this time. Maybe.
Dick Lewis is the commander of the task force. He says artists should express themselves, but he wonders what this message is.
Perhaps if they have information that we don't have about these murders, I'd like to have them give me that information.
There's also a second billboard near the San Diego Police Department. The string of killings have been referred to as the prostitute slayings, but not all were. The artists say they want the victims to be seen as human. The billboard is supposed to make people think, according to the artists, but in order to provoke thought, it raises the question, does it need to be recognized as art? Do you think it's art?
No. No.
Do you think that it's art?
I wouldn't go that far.
Regardless of the perception, the billboards are a curiosity, and one the artists hope will bring more attention to the violence suffered by women. Downtown, Bernard Gonzalez, KNSD, News San Diego.
NHI stands for No Humans Involved. These billboards will be up for a month. They're a forerunner to an exhibit that will open tomorrow. Part of the money to pay for them comes from the National Endowment for the Arts. Recently, the NEA was persuaded by Congressman Bill Lowry to discontinue giving any money for use to rent billboards, but that apparently does not apply to this project.
Well, still ahead on News San Diego at 6, a controversial billboard raises eyebrows and the question, what is art?
Next, here on KNSD.
The unsolved murder case of Donna Gentile is the focal point of a billboard exhibit of local artists. 2 billboards have been rented in the downtown area. The photo image of Gentile, along with the letters NHI, are depicted on the billboards. NHI is old-time police jargon for no humans involved. The term was once used in describing unsolved murder cases involving prostitutes, transients, and the like. The artists say the Gentile case represents the stereotyping of these people by society as less than human.
As community-based artists, we found it was important to raise this, that particularly the violence against women is on the increase, and these are indications of it, and women should not feel particularly safe with these unsolved murders.
Gentile's case is one of 40-plus women murdered, investigated by the Metropolitan Homicide Task Force.
We're going to take you to a bit of a mystery. A couple of billboards downtown have many San Diegans asking what the letters NHI stand for. No humans involved is a term some San Diego artists claim police once used to describe prostitutes, drug addicts, or transients. The woman in the picture is Donna Gentile. Gentile was murdered in 1985, shortly after testifying against 2 San Diego police officers. The artist commissioned this billboard, located at 14th and G Streets, to draw attention to what they call flawed investigation into Gentile's murder.
This is KUSI News at 10.
San Diego has its own unsolved mysteries, and a new art gallery opens today, so the victims will not be forgotten.
Controversial art exhibit opened this evening in downtown San Diego. The display is called NHI. The letters mean no humans involved. Some police officers use the term to describe murder victims on the fringes of society. The downtown photo exhibit is dedicated to the memory of 45-area women whose murders are unsolved.
And that lost their lives in San Diego County between 1985 and 1991. They're referred to here as the prostitute murders, and we think that that's part of the problem, is that they've been classified. There's been they've been classified with the term, and we think that the investigation into the crimes and to solve the murders has been not given enough attention.
The display is part of a month-long, multifaceted art project that features the picture of Donna Gentile, a prostitute and alleged police informant. One HI artist says the main reason for the show is to bring the guilty to justice.
Local artists target police with an exhibit about a string of unsolved murders.
Margaret, also about killings, unsolved murder, the focus of an art exhibit open right now in downtown. Its authors are upset about the way the Metro Homicide Task Force has investigated dozens of killings. Tonight, a picture of each victim hangs in silent protest. If these lips could tell what these eyes have seen, if only Donna Gentile were still alive. Gentile, one of 45 depicted here on these stark walls, all with at least 2 things in common. They're all women, and they were all murdered. They are Marcia Shirlene, Deborah Ann Stanford, and Linda Joyce Nelson, all posthumously honored here for what these artists say is a lack of interest and care on the part of police.
Who have pushed this issue under the carpet, who have conveniently categorized these 45 dead women as prostitutes, drug addicts, and transients so that community outrage and attention wouldn't be focused on the largest series of killings in the history of the United States.
The knowledge about them is kept from the community, and when they are talked about, they're talked about in a way that says these women in some ways deserved it because of who they were.
It is titled simply but sincerely, NHI.
Misdemeanor murders, biker chicks and hookers, NHI, no humans involved.
A term applied to crimes in which the police departments de-accentuate or, deprioritize the solving of these crimes as if there are no humans involved, as if they're crimes against property.
It's not the kind of thing the mother of a face like this would want to hear from those who protect and serve. If art imitates life, then death can be art. But the message here transcends aesthetics and dives into responsibility and morality.
We're hoping people will also ask that the murders be investigated in a more full way, and that the attention of what's going on here will be drawn. And that's the most we can hope for as artists.
NHI, no humans involved, all 45 of them.
We tried to reach members of the Metro Homicide Task Force for their side of the story, but none was available. The exhibit, meantime, runs through March 14th.
The team that stands for San Diego. This is 10 News Weekend Edition.
The faces of murdered women line the walls of a small art gallery tonight. At 11 o'clock, the 45 victims are part of the largest ring of unsolved murders in the nation. They were murdered in San Diego County. To draw attention to that fact, a very disturbing display opened here tonight. At first glance, this might appear to be just another one of San Diego's small art galleries. On exhibit, 45 black and white photos. Photos representing 45 women murdered in San Diego County since 1985. These photos are not for sale. They say art imitates life. In this exhibit, art is used to underscore death, a string of unsolved murders. What's called the largest series of unsolved murders in the United States. One of the producers of the exhibit believes the victims have been deemed unimportant by area law enforcement.
The victims have been branded as prostitutes, drug addicts, and transients, and that's a foul. That label is wrong because less than half of the women have been associated with work in prostitution.
The reality, photographs of all the victims could not be gathered, so local women volunteered to stand in. The group of artists who opened this one-show gallery believe the lives of these women have been discounted. They say the police refer to some victims as NHIs.
It means no humans involved. There's a police officer quoted as saying these were misdemeanor murders. Biker chicks and hookers, we called them NHIs, and that's completely despicable attitude for anyone to have about any human life.
When you see these murders reported on television or you read about them in the newspaper, we understand the victim's tragedy, but many times, perhaps to protect ourselves, we don't see these people as being real. Well, tonight, here, these victims become all too real. 19-year-old Michelle Riccio was murdered in Valley Center in 1986. Her mother tells us she was not only real, but very special.
She was very important to us, and the police really didn't look into her death. They found her in a grove, and they never even came by and asked any questions regarding her death.
The gallery is located at 622 Fifth Avenue downtown. It is a haunting exhibit.
Unsolved murders as art, a topic Roger Hedgecock has a view about.
NHI, no humans involved. It's old-time police slang, and suddenly NHI is back in the news. Back on 2 billboards with pictures of Donna Gentile, one of 45 women, mostly prostitutes, killed in San Diego County over the past several years. Many of those murders remain unsolved to this day. NHI, does the term imply the cops don't care? They aren't working on these cases like they would a socialite murder? Well, of course they're not. The cops cry foul, though, and the artists say the Billboard is getting attention focused on these women. And we'll take a look tomorrow on the Ross Hedgecock Report.
It was another great weather day.
Years later, their murders remain unsolved. Now their faces are appearing again on billboards. Some local artists want to make sure these women are not forgotten on the next Ross Hedgecock Report.
Next on the Ross Hedgecock Report.
Since then, 45 women have been found murdered. A few of these cases have been solved, but others have not. And now a group of local artists is reminding us about these deaths, questioning why authorities have not solved more cases. We'll talk about the artists' work, and later on, take a look at men in uniform. What makes them so appealing to the opposite sex? I'm Roger Hedgecock with Views.
Allison Ross, Roger Hedgecock, the Ross Hedgecock Report.
Two billboards are catching the eye of San Diegans downtown. The billboards have the inscription NHI and the picture of a woman. They are the work of a group of local artists who say they want to bring attention to a string of murders being investigated by the Metropolitan Task Force. The woman on the billboards is the second woman found killed in this series, Donna Gentile. NHI, Old Police slang for no humans involved, an old police term that's, they say, no longer used. It does refer to these slain prostitutes, but regardless of what they did when they were alive, these were people who had families. And I wonder if these cases had involved prominent members of our community, would this investigation into the murders have brought more quick results? Well, let's find out what people think by going, first of all, to our guests here. And first of all, we have Carla, and your last name, Carla, is?
Kirkwood.
Carla Kirkwood. And you're one of how many artists involved with this?
There's 5 artists involved in this.
And Elizabeth Cisco? Okay. Now, Carla, the artists involved are independent?
We all do our own form of art and then sometimes come together and collaborate on public art, which is this particular genre of art form.
And why this topic?
Well, partly it's been on the national agenda for the last 2 years, the increasing violence against women and children particularly going on. I mean, the statistics are alarming, even in our own city, violent assault and rape against women. And what we saw in this case was, numerically, actually, only about 17 of the women out of the 45 have been classified as prostitutes. That didn't matter to us anyway, by the way. A number of them are unidentified, and a number of them were mothers, wives, nurses, teachers, and so on. And the fact that there is someone out there killing a large number of women was very disturbing, not only to the women in the group, but men as well, and wanting to raise attention to that point.
Elizabeth, there's been a lot of attention paid, of course, in the media to these killings. Donna Gentile's picture's been in the paper a lot. And there's a Metropolitan Task Force. Police officers have, a lot of police officers assigned at a time when there aren't too many to go around, assigned to look at this. And some of the cases, in fact, have been solved, have been prosecuted. What is the reason for now trying to bring even more attention to bear on these issues?
Well, let's go back to some of the things you said. First, there's only been one conviction in all of the 45 cases. Only a man named Buzzard Stevens has been convicted in the slaying of Cynthia Lou McVeigh. The ratio of detectives to investigation in this particular series is appallingly high. In Los Angeles, with the Hillside Stranglers, there was a ratio of 0.4 to 1 investigators per case. In the Claremont killings in San Diego, there were 34 officers assigned to look into one killer at large. So the public perception might be there's a lot of attention being given to these cases, but that doesn't match up with the facts.
Let's find out what our viewers are thinking about this. 570-1339, our number. Let's get you involved in this. Let me go back to Carla. The money for the billboards and the art that you did comes from who?
It's in part funded by the NEA and in some ways our own labor and our own finances as well. We received an Inner Arts grant last year, picked by a peer panel of National Artists Council that selected our project to be funded by the NEA.
NEA is?
The National Endowment for the Arts.
Right. Now, the National Endowment for the Arts, of course, has gotten very controversial reviews over the years for a number of controversial, quote, art projects that have gotten people upset. And I wonder if in this public art, as you phrased it, is it your, what is your idea? What are you trying to get from people? Because you're obviously, with some of this stuff, going to upset some people.
Well, hopefully not only upset, but enlighten and bring to the fore some very important things that are going on within our own community. The idea of public art as a form is really just like a talk show or the Third Thursday that Channel 39 does, is another forum for people to publicly discuss the issues that are of concern to a community. Public art plays that role for artists, and that's why it's classified as public art. So in some ways, in your own field as a journalist and a talk show host, that you bring those issues to the light. As artists, public art is the format in which we do that. And it's certainly practiced throughout the country and been done in almost every major city of the country.
The objection I hear to that is that that's all well and good, but why take taxpayers' money to do it? We don't do that on the talk show. We don't do that here. It's all private. It's all consensual. People can view or not view. They aren't forced to support billboards or talk shows. In your case, they're forced to support the billboards. It's tax money. It's taken from all the people of the United States. And you determine, your group, the 5 artists, what issue you're going to take up and how you're going to play it and what you're going to do it. Your agenda is financed by the rest of the taxpayers who may or may not agree with you. How does that work?
First is art. I mean, I think art is, first of all, to have consensus on art would be ridiculous. Most people in this room would have a different format of what art would be. So the task of the National Endowment of the Arts is to fund a diversity of artists. Some who may have a controversial opinion, some who may do landscapes that may not be as controversial, and so on. But I also think shows like this are in some ways federally endowed in the sense that advertisers pay for the time in which this is shot, advertising is paid, and the airwaves are federally funded. And then the corporations basically pay the advertisers and write this off as a business expense. So, in fact, funding for this entire hour is written off by large corporations as business expenses and given a tax break for that reason. So, substantially, almost everything we do does have some federal money involved in it. And
okay,
so,
I guess I can't let that go by. The federal airwaves are not federally funded.
no,
this
but they're federally administered. In other words, you have to apply for a license to the federal government for
But there's
the
no
airwaves.
subsidy. There's a license, but no subsidy. There's no grant here to do this talk show.
But I don't think
the point I'm making is that you folks are taking tax money to impose your view of what should happen in this community on these murders on the rest of us, and I just wonder why you should have public money and why the rest of us shouldn't.
The National Endowment for the Arts is something that was voted into being by the congressional body. So it's not as if we're going into a government office and saying fund us, so that it's something that all citizens supported through their representatives and senators, and that's why the endowment exists. Now, I think to talk specifically about funding is to get away from the idea of freedom of expression in our culture, and can our democracy support a variety and a diversity of opinions around different issues, and why should anyone within our culture feel that they need to be silenced because someone else doesn't like what they're saying?
All right, let's find out what our viewers think and go to the phones. Sharon, go ahead.
Hi, I'm not too familiar with the cases down there, but I do live in the Lake Elsinore area, and we've had our own serial killer here. My problem with this is you're taking federal monies that me as a taxpayer are paying in. What's happening to the children of these victims? Are they being provided for? And why couldn't the money that we're spending on this supposed art, why couldn't that go to help offset some of these costs for these children? Whether these women have 1 or 5 children, all they get is one certain amount from Social Security, and that's it.
Now, what about that? I wonder if there's a woman who's wondering about the allocation and priority of public funds.
Well, I think that's a question in itself for the whole country to address. We need to deal with the question of the prioritizing of money in this country. To say that our project is taking away the breakfast program is not accurate. That's not been the case of it. We should point out that the funding for this is $12,000 for 2 years research by 5 people. So it's not like we're substantially being funded or subsidized or taking money for ourselves. We would argue, yes, we think those children should be taken care of. We find it a tragedy that those women were murdered and those children no longer have their families. Our importance in this is many people in our community have not been made aware, or it has been glossed over, and hopefully that the children of these women have the right to know that who murdered those women can be brought to justice, and it is our hope that the project will contribute to that. But certainly we are concerned about those children. We've met women who've come in who've taken care of children that are part of the serial in this town.
Okay, let's take another call. Kathy, go ahead.
Yes, I wanted to say that I think that it's really great because I wanted to just say that I'm supportive of them because I was unaware that the police force was not, as many as we thought. And plus, if it were our family members, we would be extremely supportive of these artists. And I think what they're doing is great.
Okay, good. By the way, on the police, we did invite the police and particularly the people, Dick Lewis, who was with this Metropolitan Task Force, and other members, anybody from the police department. They declined to appear today to answer questions as to what is going on with this investigation. They indicated they were in mid-investigation and that we would see results, but whether or not that's going to be forthcoming, or whether or not these billboards are going to increase the probability of successful prosecutions. Have you got any feedback, the artists who did this, got any feedback from the police department or the community that this is actually going to help? We got an angry populace maybe that responds, but then how does that translate into more prosecution?
Well, I think just public awareness about the issue will increase the pressure on the task force to, in fact, take this series of murders more seriously. Also, I just think that public knowledge has helped the families already enormously. We've been in contact with a number of family members. They've been quoted in the book that we wrote for the project. They came to the opening, they spoke out on TV, and they feel for the first time ever the death of their loved one is being taken seriously. So at that humanitarian level, I think the project has already done a world of good.
All right, when we return, the reaction from San Diegans about these billboards. Stay with us.
Tonight at 6 and 11 on KNSD's News San Diego.
Whether you're a prostitute, you're alien, you're transient, no matter what, we are all human beings.
If you don't know anything about it, you don't know exactly what NHI stands for.
No humans involved attachment.
It's obvious there was a human involved. You know, maybe they can come up with something else, but certainly not that.
And I think people are really concerned and would like to have some answers, and rightly so.
They shouldn't use that term. It's very inhuman.
All right, 570-1339. Let's get your opinions on these billboards and start again with our audience. Hi.
Hi, I'm Keith. I'm from San Carlos. I was curious. It seems that your main objective with billboards is to put pressure on the task force, and I was curious. It seems like it's kind of a roundabout way. I was curious as to what direct relations you have with the task force other than the billboards.
We don't have any direct relationship with the task force, basically because we are citizens and artists. What we have done, I did contact, we were trying to, there's also a gallery exhibition. The billboard is just one part of the overall project. There's a gallery exhibition at 622 Fifth with a series of 45 photographs. I did contact the homicide task force twice myself personally, trying to get the photographs of the women so that they could be presented. We did not have a stand-up position that we wouldn't talk or discuss that with people. And also laid out, I would write a letter basically stating the purpose for it so that we could have the photographs, and we were told we could not have access to any of that as it was not public information. So we tried to work through journalists. I think for us more, the question of the categorizing of these murders as that they are people who are less valuable than human, or that you and I wouldn't care about them because 17, not 45, 17 of them have been caught for soliciting for prostitution. That was our most important thing in this community, to do that. As we did more research and found out how numerically limited the number of women that had been attached to prostitution, although we don't say that as a justification for their murder on any level, we were surprised that so many people had been lumped together. And to bring that to our community as well, the task force must do its job, and citizens of a community must bring to bear on their city officials to the work they're supposed to do.
All right, let me go to the phones then. It's Steve in Oceanside. Hi.
Hi, how are you?
Good.
The question I have, or more or less a statement, is being in law enforcement for 8 years and investigation for 4, once every investigative leave and effort has been put into a case, there's really nothing more the police can do if there's nothing to follow up on. And as it being in law enforcement, human life is very precious, and when it's taken away, everyone in this field will do anything that they can to solve that problem.
Steve, what do you think about the contrast that our guests today have made between the effort on the Cleophas Prince matter, where young college students, young women in more affluent neighborhoods perhaps, were murdered, and there was a whole hue and cry about it. These poorer, more obscure, some of whom are prostitutes, etc. kind of women get murdered, 45 of them lumped together in this current investigation, and it doesn't seem like there's the kind of attention, the kind of heat, the kind of resources being applied to this. How do you react to that?
The reaction to that would be most of that is politics.
But it does exist.
Yes.
Well, that's the point of the show. Why would these women deserve less than the women who were killed in Claremont by somebody and now allegedly Cleophas Prince?
That I couldn't answer. But the investigators that are working the cases, I know that they're putting every effort that they can into those cases. Whether there's 45 or 10, those 10 can still follow up the same exact leads as the 45 investigators.
Okay, some of those questions we can't answer today because, again, we had invited the police department to participate today. They're not here, and we can't get their answer to that question, but it does seem like a legitimate question.
We can say that families have been dissatisfied with the investigation. One of the mothers, Pat Riccio, said the only contact she had with law enforcement was a card from the coroner's office in her front door and a phone call telling her that her daughter was dead, and that was it.
Was your name Keith? Yes. One of the other things that has happened since we opened the show, and we've learned a lot every day that the gallery's open, new people come in, is that we had people come in on Saturday who have worked for years to try to get the police to acknowledge. Many of the families have not really even been talked to. Michelle Riccio's death was given to the mother by a coroner's card in the door, and that was the only investigation done. Your daughter's dead. One of the things that happened in terms of our work as community artists is that families for the first time were able to meet each other, and that was important to us. You have a daughter who is labeled in a category, who is cut up or strangled or sexually assaulted and dumped on the side of the road, and that murder is lumped together in a string and labeled a certain way and given a low priority. That's a horrible thing to live with all of your life. And so one of the things that we've been able to do in that level is to have people have that contact.
So you're saying that the families of the victims really are responding to you, to the gallery, to the billboards, as something that finally is paying attention to them?
Yeah, I think that they feel.
Yes, and that's certainly the family members we've been able to contact.
Let's get to our phones. Pat in Lemon Grove, go ahead.
Yeah, Roger, this is almost everything that this endowment does is a bunch of propaganda as far as I'm concerned. They say it's given a low priority. How do they know that? If the police got some leads, they're not going to come out here and tell everybody who the suspects are. It seems like it's just their opinion that this has been shoved down to the bottom of the barrel and that they're labeled as no humans involved. I guess they heard that catchword and thought it would make a posters. Why is everything they do slanted to the left, and why don't they put a poster up of some of some drive-by shootings or some policemen that got killed or something of that nature?
Now, this is the second or third project of some artists in San Diego that has been seen by many people as anti-police. There's not been a single one that's been anti-gang or anti-illegal alien or anti-crime. Why is that?
Well, first of all, I would not choose to I don't use the term illegal alien any more than I do NHI. So
I would bet you don't.
That would be a principal difference. However, in my own work as an artist, I have done a lot of work around gangs, responsible decision-making, anti-drug campaign work. So it's not like I am only characterized by one particular kind of work, and I think that's also true of some of the other artists. The fact that this receives the kind of attention it does doesn't mean that other people are not involved in that work.
Attention that you desire. When you put up a billboard, you're asking for attention. When you take a bus stop and you put bullet holes on it and accuse the police of being reckless in their shooting of civilians, you are, in effect, making political statements, and you're making very strong statements asking for public response. I don't think you deny that.
I would say what we're providing is we're providing a different forum for the community to get into the discussion, because it's often so hard for people just to come forward and speak. There's very little avenue for them. In the case of the bus poster, the dialogue was controlled pretty much by the police department until the posters went up and other community members were acknowledged. I don't think, though, that these statements are anti-anything. I think they are pro-accountability in all walks of life. I think that's something very important to our community. So those people who choose to look at the work and see it negatively, I think, just have that frame of mind. But really, it's very important that we can have faith and trust in our law enforcement and our counsel.
And also, I think we have to point out is, while we talk about the small grant we got to do this art project, every police officer is paid by city taxes. So the question that we're held accountable for a small grant where we want to raise a community issue and juxtaposed to people who are also paid by city taxes. That's
all right,
the
let's
question
come back.
that should be raised.
Let's come back on that point, and we'll come back with your call at 570-1339 after this.
That's a sad indictment on how we would go about labeling the death of a human being.
I think that's kind of dehumanizing an individual.
Have somebody look into their death regardless of what the cause is or who they are. I am concerned that these people are not considered human beings.
All right, let's get your reaction at 570-1339 and in our audience. Hi there.
Hi, I'm Jill from San Diego. My question was, instead of having this project funded by a organization for the arts, why wasn't it funded by something more politically minded organization?
Well, first of all, one of the things we have to point out is the billboard is only one aspect, and this is one of the things that we were talking about before. And the billboard itself is not literal. We consider it basically a structure of art, a particular genre that's very American in the sense of public art. It also has an exhibition of 45 photographs, which are 20 by 24 inches, that are in a gallery space. The exhibition is somewhat like a memorial, an artist memorial. We have a performance that is done, an original performance written and directed and staged in the space, dealing with the question of women and the violence against women. So the elements of it, and the book is basically a product of also people who have produced books. So one thing is that we're not only talking about a billboard, we're talking about a series of artist events. And two, I think inevitably many people have many different feelings about what constitutes art. It's a very subjective question. Your home and my home would be totally different probably, but nonetheless valid as forms of art. And so what we would say is there's all kinds of manners of production of art and creation of art, and some of them will be controversial, which labels them as political, and some of them may not be controversial to other people, but to someone else. And so we would say we are artists, and we consider the work that we have developed on this project, which is a month-long project, is constituted as a work of art in a series of programs and projects developed around the NEH.
All right, let's go to the phones again. 570-1339. Bruce is there. Hi.
Hi, Roger. I'm Bruce from North Park, and I'd like to congratulate these artists on their efforts. And it seems like the audience is also going with no humans involved because they're skirting away from the issue of these prostitutes. Word on the street is that some people think that cops are involved. Has anybody heard anything about that?
That's been in the paper. The conjecture has been there from a lot of different sources, and apparently the task force has been addressing that. Again, we would like to have asked a question about that to the police department. They declined to appear today.
The thing also, this is Bruce, is that who?
Yeah, Bruce.
There has been a series of articles developed over a 6-year period by almost every major publication in San Diego that has tried to pursue this question. Many of them have hit walls, had to stop, find new angles or whatever. Almost everything we know as artists comes from those journalists and from the media sources. And we want to congratulate the amount of work that they did as well, which helped us to be able to create the work and raise the issue.
All right, back to the phones. Doug, go ahead. Doug, you're there.
Hello?
Hi.
I think this thing is a waste of taxpayers' money.
Why?
Well, they just took the money, had a picture made, give it to a billboard company, and it shows up on the billboards. But what I really wanted to say was, why don't we let these ladies rest in peace? I'm sure they died a terrible death. But let them rest in peace. Let the police department do their job. They're working with other departments all over the country where they have serial killings. And I believe that if these people got this kind of money to waste to the taxpayers, I think it could be put to better use.
All right. A response?
Go ahead, Liz. I think you...
Well, I think that the families will never rest in peace until there's been some closure to the cases of who killed their daughter and why their daughter was killed, so that to say let them rest in peace, I think that would be wonderful. That's what everyone wants in this situation, but that can't be done until a serious investigation has taken place.
Let me ask you, on what basis would you say, what facts do you have that a serious investigation, as you put it, is not taking place?
Even a member of the homicide task force from the state attorney general's office has admitted that the investigation into the series of killings has been diverted because the task force has spent most of its time policing the police and looking into police misconduct and allegations of police misconduct raised by the 1989 grand jury. So it's not just us saying that. It's also Assistant Chief Norm Stamper admitting that the investigations have been less than intensive and less than how they should have. There's been admission on the part of the police department that if law enforcement is indeed involved, that these are going to be quote-unquote tough cases to crack. So it's the police department saying it. It's not just me saying it.
It's our hope that We would like people to be able to rest in peace. Our concern is if these things are not solved, if these things continue on, we don't want more people to rest in peace under these conditions. Not only that, families do not rest in peace that have this happen to their children.
Let me take another call. Julie, go ahead.
I commend these artists. I do think that this project is art, and I think that they've taken a bold step doing what they did, and that I also think that the police force is not taking this seriously. If they've obviously not notified family members, this is not taken seriously. And I support it. Art is in the eye of the beholder, and I think that this is wonderful. And obviously there is truth to this, or there wouldn't be a controversy.
Okay, hey, thanks for the call, and thanks to our panelists for being here. We're out of time, but I want to thank them and also our audience for discussing this Billboard story with us. Coming up in the second half hour, we're going to lighten up things a little bit and meet two men, very single and available, by the way, who have an advantage over other men. They're in uniform, and Allison will bring us up to date as well on today's news. Stay with us.
This is 10 News Weekend Edition.
The murder of Mary Lou Olson has never been solved. At 11 o'clock, her rape and murder more than 30 years ago is being used to draw attention to the rape and murder of 45 women in San Diego County. There is a difference. 30 years ago, Mary Lou's case was given a lot of attention. Mary Lou was considered a good girl. This downtown art gallery is lined with the black and white photos of bad girls. The photos represent 45 women in face or spirit, women who were murdered in San Diego County. The creators of the NHI exhibit say that despite the brutality of the murders, there seems to be no great sense of community outrage. The No Humans Involved exhibit and display are efforts of 5 local artists, efforts to draw attention to the string of prostitute murders.
Every slaughter a crime, and the belief that resistance out of fashion is inevitable.
The artists believe society is willing to accept the murders of bad girls. Playwright Carla Kirkwood at one time thought,
I should feel safe in my home because these women are labeled as prostitutes, and so therefore, on some level, they get what they deserve, is the kind of thinking.
The play traces the short life of Mary Lou Olson. A junior at Hilltop High School was found raped and murdered in 1959.
Mary Lou was a very sweet-faced cheerleader. I grew up seeing that face on television when the search was out for her. It changed how the young girls who grew up in this town felt about being outside.
A 14-day search followed her disappearance. Exhibit producers say some 30 years later, the murder of 45 women, bad girls, gets little attention.
People who would have a tendency to murder women would murder any woman, and so us accepting those definitions of good and bad are a false sense of security.
NHI is a term some law enforcement officers used in the past when describing a case that means no humans involved. The producers of the exhibit believe all human life has the same value and importance. The play will run again next week. Tonight, more claims of police mishandling of San Diego's worst mass murder case. The killings involve women, many of whom are prostitutes or drug users. Byron Harlan says informants and friends of the victims are coming forward demanding answers from police.
They are the names and some of the faces of the 45 women who are dead, sexually assaulted and murdered in San Diego County. They surround the audience that has once again come to see the downtown exhibit and ask why most of the murders are unsolved. They include Denise Locke, a former informant who says a former police investigator, Harold Gudarzi, told her,
well, you work with me and you do what I want, including the sex part of it, or I put your name out there in a task force and you're going to wind up dead like any other informant.
It is damaging information, and it's the type of information that continues to filter out of these meetings.
I think there's an uncomfortableness about what the answer might be.
Douglas Holbrook represented Donna Gentile, a prostitute and police informant found murdered back in 1985, her mouth stuffed with gravel. Her murder is unsolved. Her lawyer wants investigators to release details about the killing.
Why not let us know? Why not let us know exactly what information you have? Let us look at it. Let's see if we can pick up some inconsistencies.
That's what's frustrated so many of the people who've come here to listen. They want investigators to say what they know about the murders. They're convinced officers are withholding too much. Byron Harlan, 10 News.
There were harsh words today for the police and other public servants handling a series of women's homicides that began back in 1985. The words came from panelists at the NHI Art Project, which mourns the deaths of 45 victims listed as prostitutes, drug addicts, and transients. NHI stands for No Humans Involved, police jargon, which the artists say discounts the inhumanity of the crimes. Among the speakers was the mother of Michelle Riccio, the cause of whose death was determined to be a drug overdose. The next of kin notification was by a business card left in a screen door.
Leaving a business card in someone's screen is just not very professional. If she had not died from a drug injection, would they have been more sensitive? I feel that they did not treat her as they would some upstanding citizen.
The exhibit is on display through Saturday at 622 5th Street in downtown San Diego. It's partially funded by the National Endowment for the Arts.
Should police who extort prostitutes for street information, sex, and money be exposed and prosecuted? That and other volatile issues were discussed today at the International Women's Day Forum downtown. More than 100 people attended the forum, which featured the photographs of 45 San Diego area women listed as prostitutes by police. The victims were killed between 1985 and last year. Only one of those murders has been solved. Organizers of the event say the police department is dragging its feet.
We ask you to honor the victims of these violent murders by your outrage. We want you to convey that outrage to the San Diego community and to the mayor and the city council, because these elected officials are the ones accountable for the appalling lack of priority given to these murders. We want you to demand that the deaths of these women be investigated by a task force that is not riddled with charges of police misconduct and corruption.
Those panel members say that they'll be contacting each city council member and the mayor, demanding that action be taken in these unsolved homicides.
Since 1985, at least 45 women have been murdered in the San Diego area. The murders have not been solved. A group of artists thinks it's because many of the victims were prostitutes. They claim the police simply don't care. But as CNN's Robert Vito reports, some of the artists are trying to change that.
Some police officers call it NHI, No Humans Involved, a term that shrugs off crimes against prostitutes, drug users, and transients. That's what this photographic exhibit in San Diego is about. A group of outraged artists is trying to focus attention on the murders of 45 women in the county since 1985. They claim the homicides remain unsolved because police categorize the victims, many of them prostitutes, as NHI.
We felt that the community should see them as people and as human beings, and that the community should be aware of these deaths in a way that they have not been made aware of before.
Because pictures were not available for most of the women, volunteers agreed to let their photos stand in. Police deny they've characterized the cases as NHI, but there are nagging concerns. Thomas Street is the former lead investigator in the task force assigned to find the killer or killers. Street claims he was hindered by other police officers involved in the investigation.
Perhaps they felt that I was getting too close with their actual involvement in a ring of prostitution. Perhaps they felt that I was getting too close to trafficking in narcotics. Perhaps they felt I was getting too close to their overt activities in a conspiracy to murder Donna Gentile and other prostitutes.
Gentile also worked as a police informant, but Richard Lewis, an assistant district attorney in San Diego who oversees the task force, calls Street's allegations ridiculous.
There was all kinds of allegations of sexual intercourse, sexual conduct, murder of prostitutes. Those things just didn't occur.
Lewis says the homicides have not been ignored. He says Ronald Porter has been charged with one of the murders and may have been involved in 19 others. Lewis says the killings have stopped since Porter was jailed in 1988 on a separate case. But Lewis admits the investigation has had its share of mistakes, among them the case of Michelle Riccio, whose body was found in 1986.
They said, your daughter's case has been closed. It was closed. It was an accidental drug overdose.
Pat Riccio knew her daughter was on drugs, but was convinced she was murdered, and she could never get police to talk to her about that. Lewis has apologized to the Riccios.
Well, it was determined by the coroner to be a drug overdose case. I don't believe so. I think she was murdered.
The feeling being a mother, I will never forget Michelle, and I still cry about Michelle. Maybe if we can settle this crime, maybe then it'll end a little for me.
Robert Vito, CNN, San Diego.
The artists responsible for the projects refer to news reports alleging that police have used this term to dehumanize the women involved and deprioritize their cases.
To part of the problems with the flawed investigation that perhaps these people, being from marginalized parts of our society, perhaps the cases just weren't given the due attention that they deserved.
But the head of the Metropolitan Homicide Task Force, Dick Lewis, resents this allegation.
It's not a term that's used by modern law enforcement. The thing that offended me was that nobody cared. The difficulty with these types of murders is not one of priority. It's the fact that they have no real attachments to the community. Nobody even knows they're missing.
The artist who created this gallery tried to give these 45 women who were sexually assaulted and murdered a face and a name. But have the murders been solved? According to police, only 8 have been solved, and the rest are still under investigation.
Despite the controversy over the NHI term, the project's message seems to have touched some.
Well, maybe, that happened to them because that was the place they were in, but I'm safe because I'm not there, and that's not really true. Once one person is victimized, everyone's victimized.
Police are prosecuting 7 suspects, while the other 36 cases are still under investigation. For News Scene, reporting from downtown, I'm Angel Franquez.
Since late February, the National Endowment for Arts has funded the NHI project. However, last week, amidst political tension, the NEA withdrew public support. This comes after the White House forced NEA Chairman John Frohnmeyer to resign. The White House acted after presidential candidate Patrick Buchanan began accusing the endowment of funding obscene art. Frohnmeyer will leave on May 1st.
This is KUSI News at 10.
San Diego police haul a murder suspect into court. A big break in the string of prostitution murders, they say. We'll have a late report. Tonight, our news is not of more crime, but of suspects caught and perhaps crime solved. Today, investigators from several task forces led handcuffed suspects into court. One charged with killing 4 prostitutes, another charged with violence, murder in Hillcrest. And today, an FBI task force scored in San Diego. In fact, we begin tonight with a tale of 3 crime task forces, each reporting success in their war against crime. Our first report tonight from Tanya Green, and what could be a big break in that string of prostitute murders that has plagued our town since the mid-'80s.
Brian Jones told a judge he is not guilty of killing 4 prostitutes and sexually assaulting and attempting to murder 2 other women. Tara Simpson, Trina Carpenter, Joanne Sweets, and Sophia Glover were all found murdered in alleys near the 5100 block of El Cajon between August of 1985 and August of 1986. 3 of the bodies were found in dumpsters.
We got our break when Diane Donnelly, the police department fingerprint lab, matched a fingerprint taken from one of the dumpsters behind his apartment, and it matched up with Brian Jones.
A special task force was formed in 1988 to investigate the murders of these 4 women and at least 41 other prostitutes or transients who disappeared between 1985 and 1987.
So far, the task force says it's found the people responsible for at least 14 of the murders. 2 have been convicted, while along with Jones, 7 others have been charged. But still 31 murders remained unsolved. And with 2 more prostitutes being murdered last week, the situation is becoming scarier and scarier for the women who still walk the streets for a living.
This is the killing ground, El Cajon Boulevard, San Diego's red light district. The ladies of the day and night are scared. Many say they are only working with pimps close by. Others work in pairs.
Every day I think about Michelle. I see a young girl.
Pat Riccio's daughter, Michelle, was one of the girls murdered in 1986. The 19-year-old was not a prostitute, but police found her dead from a drug overdose at an Escondido orange grove.
I'm getting tired of waiting for the police to do something. They have done nothing. They have never come over here to investigate, to ask any questions about Michelle, to ask any of her friends any questions. I don't know if there's any leads. They've never told me anything one way or another.
Carla Kirkwood is one of the women responsible for helping to keep the cases alive. She helped form an exhibit called No Humans Involved, which displayed the women's faces on billboards. She's happy someone has been charged with some of the murders.
We do not want politically expedient decisions. In other words, we have someone in jail, we think we can pin murders on them, and so this is convenient. We want it to be true and just. Because if it isn't, then the people who actually murder are still out on the streets.
Ryan Jones is off the streets. He has been since 1987. He's been in prison, and the prostitute murders continue. There is still a killer stalking the streets of San Diego tonight. In East San Diego, Tanya Green.